You look lonely these days, miss. G. Okbun didn't respond. She just smiled. Because that one line was exactly what she'd been dying to hear. That night, her boyfriend was already asleep, exhausted from his new toast shop. The room smelled like bread, but her heart felt empty. And in that silence, she realized she was more than just tired. She was craving attention. Gurium's looking really happy lately. Okbubun smiled at Dr. Take's casual remark. It wasn't much, but somehow, it was exactly what she needed to hear these days. A simple dog walk conversation had started to echo in her heart in ways she didn't expect. Every time she took Gurium out, she ended up bumping into him. He was always calm, gentle, warm. At first, she brushed it off as politeness. But lately, she realized she looked forward to his soft voice more than she should have. Time with Oh Hung Soo had grown shorter. Fewer words, colder glances. She tried to ignore the shift, tried to focus on what remained. But late at night, it wasn't her boyfriend she thought of, it was Dr. Take. You're not the only one glowing, miss. Gee! That one line, it lingered. She didn't answer, just smiled. And in that smile lived a loneliness she hadn't admitted to in years. Oh Hung Soo woke up at 5 a.m. just like every day since the toast shop opened. It had only been 2 weeks, but his body felt like it had worked through a whole year. He shuffled into the kitchen, turned on the lights, and slid a tray of dough into the oven. The scent of rising bread filled the shop, slow and warm. But that warmth never made it beyond the oven door. Breakfasts with Okbun had disappeared. Her seaweed soup replaced with a microwaved boiled egg in silence. He tapped on his calculator, barked half-hearted orders to the part-timer, and swiped endlessly through delivery apps. His hands were full, but his heart felt oddly hollow. What was stranger, he hadn't thought about her once that morning. At that exact moment, Okbun's phone buzzed. Busy day again? If a warm cup of tea sounds good, just say the word. She stared at the screen, then whispered to herself, how does he always know exactly what I need to hear? Okbun sat by the window, gently stroking Gurium's fur. The sun was warm on her skin, but her heart felt miles away. She lowered her phone and looked around the empty kitchen. Even the boiled egg next to the microwave felt oddly sad. She remembered the mornings they used to share. Laughter blending with the sound of rice cooking. Simple conversations that carried weight. But now it was quiet, and she was alone. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. It was Tyke. Want to take Gurium for a walk? The park's lovely today. So is the sunlight. She hesitated, just for a moment, then picked up the phone and typed back. Sounds nice. See you in a bit. The sun hadn't changed, but maybe something inside her was starting to. A gentle breeze passed between them as they sat across from each other on a park bench. Oakboon kept her hands wrapped around Guriam's leash, while Dr. Take quietly turned his coffee cup between his fingers. That small motion, silent and unassuming, had a strange calming effect on her. These days, I find myself looking forward to the night more than the morning, she said softly. There's something about walking into an empty home that makes you wish someone would just ask how you've been. He looked up. There was no surprise in his eyes, only quiet understanding. I know exactly what you mean. I spend all day caring for animals, but sometimes I miss human voices. Sending you those messages, it's my little comfort in the middle of it all. She smiled then, barely. Her words were cautious, but her heart was already leaning forward. After their walk, they stopped at the park entrance. Oakboon scooped Guriam up into her arms, and Dr. Take stood beside her close, much closer than usual. The space between them was small, but the tension was anything but. Miss G. Take said gently, voice firm despite its softness. They say hearts move, and I think that's okay. Natural, even. She turned to him slowly. His eyes weren't pleading. They were steady. Certain. Are you asking if mine already has? He didn't answer, just gave her a single nod. She looked down at Guriam, ran her fingers through his fur. Funny, she whispered. I haven't even asked myself that yet. On the walk back she said nothing. The road with Dr. Take no longer felt unfamiliar, that was the problem. It wasn't strange, it was comfortable, and that comfort quietly stirred something in her. Guriam trotted ahead, stopping occasionally to look back as if checking on them, watching them with eyes that somehow seemed to understand more than words ever could. Dr. Take glanced at her, then spoke softly. It's warm today. Feels like spring's finally here. She nodded, barely lifting the corner of her lips, unsure if it was the season or his words that warmed her more. When they reached the alley near her home, he stopped walking. I shouldn't go further, he said. Let's end it here for today. Oakboon looked at him, read the firmness beneath the quiet tone. He was drawing a line, and she saw it. She nodded, lowering her gaze. Yes, just today. As soon as she got home, she set Guriam down and leaned against the door. The soft thud as it shut behind her felt final, like drawing a curtain on something she couldn't quite name. She passed the kitchen, headed for her room when her phone buzzed. It was Take. Did you get home safe? He wrote. I really enjoyed walking with you today. A short text, but somehow full of quiet warmth. Sitting on her bed, she lowered the phone slowly. She tried to conjure Hungsu's face to see him clearly in her mind, but all she could hear was what Taik had said earlier and how it made her feel. Her mind drifted to the salon who would sit in her chair tomorrow. What story would she hear? What new face would smile at her? And which hand would she end up holding just a moment too long? The next morning, as she unlocked the salon door, the soft hum of hairdryers and scent of coffee greeted her like usual. She stood before the mirror, tying her hair back, her gaze drifting out the window. The world moved the same, but something inside her had shifted. Her first client was a middle-aged woman flipping through a fashion magazine, but Akbun wasn't really reading it. Her hands worked automatically, her smile polite, but her thoughts were elsewhere, floating between words she hadn't said yet. Her second client was a young man. As she washed his hair, she asked, almost too casually, "Do you have a girlfriend?" Then blinked at her own boldness, quickly adding, "Just curious for styling preferences." He chuckled. "Not at the moment, been too busy for that, you know." And for some reason, she felt a small, strange sense of relief she didn't bother to explain. Around noon, the salon door opened, and a familiar silhouette stepped in. It was Oh Hung-soo. Wearing his toast shop apron, he smiled like nothing had changed. "Like a regular customer, just dropping by," he said. "Did you eat yet?" Okubun blinked, then composed herself. "Not yet, been busy." "How's the shop?" He nodded. "Pretty good. College kids swarmed in yesterday. Total chaos." He pulled a small paper bag from his pocket and placed it on the table. "Only one red bean bun left." "Thought of you," he said. "You used to love these." She smiled at the gesture, but something inside her skipped. She did love them, but that was years ago. The thought stayed behind her teeth. She nodded, quietly said, "Thanks." He was the same. Still kind, still familiar, but somehow always one step too late. And sometimes that made the distance feel even further. After Hung-soo left, Okbun stared at the red bean bun for a long time. The paper bag wasn't warm anymore, and the bread inside had already gone stale. She picked it up gently, but couldn't bring herself to eat it. Then her phone buzzed again. It was Take Gurium. "Looks extra happy today. Maybe it's the weather. Fancy a walk?" She looked down at the screen and smiled quietly. She slipped on her coat again, leaving behind the faint scent of toast still lingering in the salon. In her hand, she still held the bun. She spotted Take waiting at the end of the alley. Sunlight traced the line of his shoulders, and in that moment, something in her felt lighter. With every step she took toward him, her grip on the paper bag grew tighter. They sat on the same bench again, but this time with fewer words and heavier air. Akbun reached into her bag and gently placed the paper bag on the table. "It's from Hung-soo," she said quietly. Take looked at it and said nothing, just closed his eyes for a moment, like he was accepting not just the bun, but everything it carried. Okbun exhaled slowly and continued, "He's always late. One step behind, just enough to wear me out. Then he says he's sorry every time." Taek opened his eyes. His voice was calm but firm. "Being late is a choice. But missing someone completely, that's a mistake. And I don't plan to make that mistake." She didn't look away. Something inside her softened and cracked at the same time. She couldn't deny it anymore. He was coming closer, and she was letting him. A few days later, it rained again. Okbun was on her way to work umbrella in hand when she ran into Taek. He was holding Gurium and smiled the moment he saw her. It wasn't awkward, just natural, like they were supposed to meet there. They walked in silence, but even under the cold drizzle the air between them felt warm. At a crosswalk, waiting for the light, he spoke first. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. You show up in the quietest moments of my day." She held her breath. It wasn't a confession, not really, but it pierced something in her. He didn't wait for her reply, just looked at her like he already knew. The light changed, and they stepped forward together. Their pace was slow, shoulders brushing just barely. But even through the rain, his words stayed in her ears. She knew this moment would change something, and there'd be no going back. That night, Okbun stayed up with the lights on. The rain outside had quieted, but the waves inside her had not. She sat on the couch, hands cupping a lukewarm coffee, staring blankly at the wall. Her thoughts were crowded with both Hungsu and Taek. Taek's words had bypassed logic and landed straight in her chest. He never asked for anything, never stirred her intentionally, but his presence filled spaces in her she didn't know were empty. Hungsu, on the other hand, still lived in his own rhythm, unaware of how far she'd drifted. She turned her phone on, then off, looked out the window, then shut her eyes. She didn't know what the right choice was, but something deep down told her the decision might no longer be hers to control. She stood up and picked up Gurium, who nestled into her chest, eyes closed. The quiet warmth of that moment felt less like comfort and more like confirmation. The next morning, Okbun opened the salon earlier than usual. She needed to straighten things out: mirrors, drawers, even the smallest combs, each gesture sweeping through her heart as much as the space around her. It looked like routine, but her heartbeat said otherwise. When the morning passed without a single client, she brewed coffee. The warmth filled the room, but not her. Her thoughts drifted to that park path with Taek, and the way he had looked at her, quiet but clear, more honest than anything words could offer. The door creaked open. It was Hungsu, unannounced. She didn't flinch. He gave a sheepish smile and took a seat. "I finished work early today. Thought we could have lunch, just like old times." Okbun nodded, but peace did not return. A quiet guilt for one man and a yearning for another wrapped around her chest. She knew she couldn't easily push either away, and that made it harder than anything else. At lunchtime, they sat across from each other in a small restaurant. Hungsu joked while flipping through the menu. "This place still makes the soft tofu stew you used to love. Remember?" She smiled, but only faintly. The memory was there, but the feeling had faded. When the food arrived, he picked up his spoon first. "So how's work been? Busy?" "I've been buried in toast since dawn every day, but sometimes it's nice to slow down, eat together like this, you know." Okbun nodded, but didn't reply. Her heart couldn't find its place in the world he was describing. The restaurant was warm, but something inside her felt cold. Hung-soo didn't seem to notice and kept eating casually. Her phone buzzed. The name on the screen was Tae-gae, single message. Did you eat? That one line stirred something deep inside. She stared at the phone, then quietly picked up her spoon again, as if steadying herself against the storm inside. After lunch, they stopped outside the restaurant. The silence between them hung heavy. Hung-soo hesitated, then finally spoke. I feel like we've grown distant lately. If it's because I've been busy, I'm sorry. Ok-boon didn't respond. She turned her head, watching the people passing by. Her thoughts floated with the crowd, disconnected and quiet. Then Hung-soo reached out, placing his hand gently over hers. It was warm, but unfamiliar. She didn't pull away, but she didn't meet his eyes either. Her voice was soft but certain. It's not the busyness that made us distant. It's how we look at each other now. That's what's changed. He looked confused, not quite understanding. She didn't elaborate, and he didn't ask again. That was enough. They exchanged a quiet goodbye and walked off in separate directions. Back at the salon, Ok-boon let out a long breath as she shut the door behind her. The conversation from lunch clung to her. The voice that once comforted her now felt distant. She sat in front of the mirror, staring at herself beneath minimal makeup, thoughts churning behind her tired eyes. She reached for her phone and checked her messages. There it was, another one from Take Hope. Lunch went well. Fancy a cup of coffee later. Her fingers hovered over the screen before typing sure maybe. Around dinner time, even after she sent it, she held the phone in her hands, unwilling to set it down, as if needing the reply to confirm the choice she'd just made. The reflection in the mirror smiled, not with regret, not with sorrow, but like someone standing at the edge of a new season. She didn't know what she'd lose or gain, but one thing was clear. She couldn't stay where she was any longer. Near sunset, they sat across from each other at a quiet cafe. Taek sat by the window, slowly turning his coffee cup between his fingers while watching her. Ok-boon sipped her drink silently, and between them, something deeper than words moved in the stillness. He finally spoke. Your face seems a little less hesitant today. She smiled softly and nodded. Yeah, I think I finally know where my heart is leaning. He set down his cup and leaned in slightly. May I be honest now? I was willing to wait as long as you needed. But tonight, I need to ask. Can I be a possibility you consider? Ok-boon didn't respond right away. The fading light outside painted her cheeks in warm amber. After a long pause, she met his gaze and answered quietly, I will consider it. Sincerely. After leaving the cafe, they walked in silence under the night air. Ok-boon kept her hands in her pockets, while Taek stayed beside her, a small respectful distance between them. It wasn't awkward anymore. Everything had already been said. At the mouth of the alley, Taek stopped walking. Thanks for tonight. And just so you know, I meant every word. She paused at that, then slowly nodded. Me too. There was no lie in my answer either. He smiled gently and didn't move any closer, just said, "Get home safe," and turned away. She stood there watching his silhouette disappear into the dark. Even after he was gone, she didn't move. Her heart felt curled in quiet thought, and for the first time she replayed her decision, not with fear, but with the beginning of resolve. Late into the night, Okbun lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her mind was quiet, yet unusually heavy. The tide of emotions that had carried her all day seemed to have calmed, but in its place came a still emptiness she couldn't quite name. She got up and walked into the living room without turning on the lights. Standing by the window, she looked out into the dark alleyway. The view felt distant, foreign, as if somewhere out there Hangzhou still lingered, and yet felt completely gone all at once. She picked up her phone and unlocked the screen. His name was still at the top of her recent calls. Her thumb hovered for a second, then stopped. She set the phone down and leaned quietly against the window frame. It was no longer about choosing someone else, but about choosing herself. She needed to be honest with what remained inside her. In the hush of the long night, a quiet resolve began to echo through her heart. The next morning, sunlight poured in brighter than usual, and Okbun stood at the window, letting it soak into her skin. Her heart felt lighter than the day before. She walked slowly to the kitchen, brewed herself coffee, and turned on soft music. It was the first peaceful morning in a long time. Holding her cup by the window, she realized her decision no longer felt confusing. Her thoughts were still tangled, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of where to go next. She finally knew where she stood, and that clarity was enough. Walking to the salon, she didn't rush. The noise of the street felt familiar, even comforting. She saw meaning in the faces passing by. A new day was starting, and as she opened the salon door, she whispered to herself, "Today will be all right, really." Around noon, the bell above the salon door rang, and she looked up instinctively. Then she froze. It was Tyke holding a tray with 2 cups of coffee and that same gentle smile. "I was passing by. Thought you might need a break." She welcomed him with a smile. It was a familiar gesture, but the flutter in her chest felt just as new. He placed the coffee on the table and quietly pulled out a chair. For a while they said nothing, just sipped their drinks and looked at each other. The silence carried more weight than words could. And then he spoke softly. "I just wanted to see you today. No reason, really." She didn't answer, just nodded slowly. The sunlight outside warmed the glass between them. The space they shared felt soft like a quiet shelter. And for the first time she had the courage to be honest with that feeling. As the afternoon wore on, the salon stayed busy. But even as Okbun moved between clients, her eyes kept drifting toward Taik, who sat quietly in the corner, reading a book. There was something calming about the way his hand cradled the coffee cup. She surprised herself. It wasn't strange anymore that his presence gave her peace even during the rush. Maybe this feeling hadn't just arrived, but had been growing slowly for a while now. and she was only just catching up. Take didn't leave. He stayed until the last customer was gone, and only then did he stand, stretching slightly. "You worked hard today," he said, and somehow those simple words felt like the warmest part of the day. She nodded and replied, "It was a long one, but you being here made it feel lighter." He smiled at that, and she smiled too, this time with nothing held back. After closing the salon, Akbun sat quietly, letting the sensations of the day linger on her fingertips. The fatigue in her body was there, but something in her heart resonated louder. She didn't turn off the lights, just pulled the curtain aside to look outside. Beneath the street lamp in the alley stood a familiar figure. He didn't wave. He simply stood there watching her. She stepped out into the night without a word. Each step toward him felt longer than it should have. When she reached him, he asked gently, "Was today okay?" She nodded slowly and said softly, "It really was. It was a good day." Take smiled. There was no urgency, no expectation, just a quiet presence waiting just for her. And she didn't look away, because this time she had decided she wouldn't look away anymore. That night, Akbun slept deeply for the first time in what felt like ages, a dreamless night that wrapped around her in silence. And when morning came, her heart finally felt steady. The sunlight was warm, the coffee was strong. Life was still messy, but she was okay. Walking to the salon, her steps felt lighter. The sounds of the street familiar, the faces of strangers welcoming. Like a new season, her heart too was starting over. While tending to her first customer, the door opened. Tyke walked in, wearing the same gentle smile. He greeted her, and she returned the smile without hesitation. In that silent exchange, their eyes said everything words couldn't. There was no more hiding, no more hesitation. What had slipped in quietly between moments had grown into something real, and that quiet certainty was beginning to hold them together.